"Get out of my workshop!" my son-in-law screamed, "in my own home." My daughter applauded, but he never. I was standing in my own kitchen at 6:15 in the morning, holding a coffee mug that had my grandson's handprint on it from 3 years ago. The coffee was cold. I hadn't noticed. I was just standing there looking out the window at the backyard, where the oak tree I planted when my daughter was born had finally grown tall enough to shade the whole house. That house, my house, the one I bought in 1998 when lumber was cheap and hope was expensive. I remember the day I signed the papers. My wife held my hand. She wore that blue dress, the one with the little flowers. My daughter was 4 years old, running around the real estate office eating a lollipop she found somewhere. The agent laughed and said, "This is the start of something beautiful." I believed her. 30 years later, I was standing in that same kitchen with cold coffee and a back that ached from sleeping on the pull-out couch in the den because my wife said my snoring was getting worse. She said it was keeping her awake. She said, "Maybe you should see a doctor." But I saw the way she looked at her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. I saw the little smile, the way her thumb scrolled slow, like she was reading something she wanted to read again and again. I told myself it was nothing. She was 62 years old. We had been married for 41 years. We had 2 children and 5 grandchildren and a joint bank account and a lifetime of Thanksgiving dinners and anniversary cruises and arguments about paint colors. That kind of history does not just dissolve. That is what I told myself. My daughter Amanda lived 2 miles away. She married a man named Kyle, who sold something. I never really understood what. He worked from home mostly. He wore expensive sneakers and drove a black truck that cost more than my first house. At first, I liked him. He was polite. He shook my hand hard. He looked me in the eye. He said, "I love your daughter, sir. She is the best thing that ever happened to me." I believed him too. That is the curse of being a father. You want to believe the people who love your children are good. You want to believe so badly that you ignore the things you see. The little flex of his jaw when she disagreed with him. The way he corrected her stories in front of other people. The time he laughed at her for ordering a salad and said, "You're eating like a rabbit again, babe." I saw it. I stored it somewhere deep. But I did not act on it because he made her happy. Or so I thought. My son Matthew lived 3 hours away in a city that kept growing. He was a good boy, a good man now, 40 years old, with a receding hairline and 2 kids of his own. He called me every Sunday. Sometimes he would just talk about the lawn or the leak in his basement, or how his oldest was struggling with algebra. Those calls were the best part of my week. I never told him that. I should have told him that. Men my age do not say things like that out loud. We show love by showing up, by fixing things, by writing checks, by being there on moving day with a truck and a strong back. I showed up for every moving day, every broken garbage disposal, every time a car battery died in a parking lot at 9 o'clock at night. I showed up. That was my language. My wife and I had a good life. Not perfect, but good. We had dinner together most nights. We watched the same shows. We went to bed at the same time. We held hands in the car like teenagers. I thought we had made it. I thought we had survived the hard years, the years when money was tight and the kids were sick and the dishwasher flooded the kitchen twice. We came out the other side, and I was proud of us. I was proud of the life we built. I would look around my living room at the family photos on the wall and feel something I cannot name now, something warm and heavy and full. I thought it would last forever. I actually believed that. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my day to pick up the grandkids from school. Amanda had asked me to do it years ago when she went back to work part-time. I said yes without thinking, because that is what you do. You say yes. So every Tuesday, I would drive my old truck to the elementary school and wait in the pickup line with all the other grandparents and young mothers in their giant SUVs. I would listen to the radio. I would tap the steering wheel. I would watch the kids come running out with their backpacks bouncing, and I would feel like I still had a purpose. That Tuesday, my grandson Liam climbed into the truck, and instead of telling me about his spelling test, he asked a question that stopped my heart for a second. He said, "Pop, why does Grandma have a boyfriend?" I almost ran off the road. I caught myself. I laughed. I said, "What are you talking about, buddy?" He said, "I saw her phone. She was showing me pictures of the puppies, and a message popped up. It said, "Good morning, beautiful," and it had a heart. He said, "That means boyfriend, right? Because mommy has hearts on her phone for daddy." I told him it was probably just a friend. I told him grandmas have friends. I told him not to worry about it. He shrugged and started talking about a kid in his class who ate glue. That was it. That was the moment a 6-year-old boy handed me a grenade, and I put it in my pocket and pretended it was a rock. I did not say anything to my wife that night. I did not sleep either. I lay on the pull-out couch in the den, staring at the ceiling fan going around and around. My mind went to places I had never allowed it to go before. I thought about the locked drawer in her nightstand. The one she started using maybe 2 years ago. She said it was for her jewelry. I never checked, because why would I check? I thought about the nights she said she was going to book club but came home later than usual. I thought about the new clothes, the little black dress she bought for no reason, the way she started wearing makeup to the grocery store. These were not things I noticed at the time. They were things my brain recorded like a security camera, and only now was I reviewing the footage. The next day, I did something I am not proud of. I waited for her to go to the bathroom, and I opened her phone. She had changed the passcode. It used to be our anniversary. Now it was something else. I tried her birthday, my birthday, the kids' birthdays, the year we got married. Nothing worked. That was the moment I knew. Not for certain, but in my gut. You do not change a passcode unless you have something to hide. I put the phone back and went outside to the garage. I stood there looking at my workbench, the one my father built in 1965, the one I learned to fix things on. I ran my hand over the wood, and I felt like a fool. I called my son Matthew that night. I told him I was worried about his mother. He asked what I meant. I could not say the words out loud. I just said, "I think something is off." He said, "Maybe you are just tired bad. Maybe you should take a nap." I said, "Yeah, maybe." I hung up and stared at the wall. The weeks that followed were a slow torture. I started watching. Really watching her. The way she smiled at her phone. The way she took her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. The way she started going for long walks alone in the evening. She never liked walks before. She said the neighborhood was boring and the sidewalks were cracked. Now she was walking 3 miles a day. She would come back with flushed cheeks and a little smile that was not meant for me. One night, I followed her. I know how that sounds. I know it makes me look small and pathetic and weak, but I had to know. I got in my truck and I drove slow down the street with my lights off. She walked to the park at the end of the road, the one where I used to push her on the swings when we were dating, that park. She sat on a bench and pulled out her phone. I sat in my truck watching from a distance, like some kind of private detective in a bad movie. After a few minutes, a car pulled into the parking lot, a silver sedan. A man got out. He was younger than me, maybe 55, tall, still had his hair. He walked over to the bench and sat down next to my wife like it was the most natural thing in the world. She leaned into him. He put his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, talking, laughing, her hand on his knee. I did not get out of the truck. I did not confront them. I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I drove home and went to the den and lay down on the pull-out couch and stared at the ceiling fan again. I did not cry. I have not cried since my father died in 2002. But I felt something crack open inside my chest, something I did not know how to name. The next morning I asked her who the man was. She looked at me with a face I had never seen before. Blank, empty, like she was looking through me instead of at me. She said, "What man?" I said, "The man at the park last night." She did not deny it. She did not apologize. She just said, "I was going to tell you." I waited. She said, "His name is David. He is a friend from the gym." I said, "The gym? You don't go to the gym." She said, "I started going 6 months ago. You were always busy with the grandkids in the house and I needed something for myself." I said, "A friend?" She said, "Yes, a friend." I looked at her and I knew. I knew she was lying. I knew there was more, but I also knew I was not ready to hear it. So I walked away. I walked out the front door and got in my truck and drove to the hardware store. I walked the aisles for an hour, touching things I did not need, hammers, screws, paintbrushes. I bought a box of nails and drove home. That was the beginning of the end. Not the dramatic explosion, not the screaming fight, just the slow dissolving of everything I thought was real. My wife started sleeping in the guest bedroom. She said it was because of my snoring. I did not argue. We stopped eating dinner together. She would make herself a salad and eat in front of the television, while I sat at the kitchen table alone with a sandwich. The silence between us was heavy and thick, like wet concrete. I felt it hardening around my chest. My daughter Amanda came over one day. She sat at the kitchen table with me and asked how I was doing. I told her I was fine. She said, "Mom seems different." I said, "Yeah, she does." Amanda looked at me with this expression I could not read, like she knew something I did not know, like she was waiting for me to figure it out on my own. I asked her if she had met a man named David. Her face did not change. She said, "No." She said, "Why would I know David?" I said, "No reason." I let it go. I should not have let it go. The betrayal that broke me did not come from my wife. Not really. What she did was painful. It was a knife in the gut. But I could have survived that. People survive infidelity. People go to counseling and work through it and learn to trust again. What I could not survive was what came next. What came next was my children. It started with a conversation I was not supposed to hear. I had gone to Amanda's house to fix a leaky faucet in her kitchen. That was my role. The fixer. The handyman. The old man who still had value because he knew which way to turn a wrench. I arrived early. The front door was unlocked because that is how they lived. Careless. Open. I walked in and I heard voices from the living room. Amanda and Kyle. They were talking about me. I did not mean to eavesdrop. I really did not. But I heard my name and I stopped walking. Kyle said, "Your dad is going to be a problem." Amanda said, "I know." He said he's not going to just give up the house. She said, "I know." He said, "We need to figure out the paperwork before he finds out about Mom and David." Amanda said, "I'm working on it." Kyle said, "Working on it isn't good enough, babe. That house is worth $700,000. We need to get it into your name before he does something stupid like sell it." Amanda said he would never sell it. That house is his whole life. Kyle said, "Exactly. That's why we need to move fast." I stood in the hallway with my tool bag in my hand and I felt the floor drop out from under me. This was not about my wife's affair anymore. This was about my daughter and her husband planning to take my house. My house. The one I bought with 40 years of sweat and overtime and skipped vacations. The one where my children grew up and learned to ride bikes and had their first kisses and graduated high school. They wanted to take it from me, and my daughter was helping them. I walked into the living room. They both went silent. I said, "What paperwork?" Amanda stood up. She had that look she used to get when she was a teenager and I caught her sneaking out, defiant but scared. She said, "Dad, you weren't supposed to hear that." I said, "What paperwork?" Kyle stood up too. He crossed his arms. He said, "We are just worried about you. You are getting older. You need to think about the future." I said, "My future is none of your business." He said, "Actually, it is. You have grandchildren. They need stability. That house is a big asset. It should stay in the family." I said, "The house is staying in the family. It is my house." He said, "For now." That word, "for now," it sat in the room like a bomb. I turned to my daughter. I looked her in the eye. I said, "Amanda, what are you doing?" She would not look back at me. She looked at the floor. She said, "Mom told me about David." She said, "Mom wants to leave you." She said, "Mom is going to ask for half of everything, and I cannot let you lose the house, Dad. I cannot let some stranger get it. So we are trying to protect it." I said, "Protect it for who?" She said, "For me, for the kids, for our family." I said, "I am your family." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was hard. She said, "You are not going to be around forever, Dad." That sentence broke something in me that has not healed, probably never will. Not going to be around forever, as if I was already dead, as if I was just an obstacle standing between them and what they deserved. I left without fixing the faucet. I drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel. I walked into my house, and my wife was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of her. Legal papers. She looked up when I came in. She did not look guilty. She looked tired,
resigned, like this was just the next step in a process she had already accepted.
I said, "What are those?" She said, "I talked to a lawyer." I said, "About what?" She said, "About the divorce." I said, "You are divorcing me?" She said, "I think it is for the best." I said, "For who?" She said, "For everyone." I said, "Not for me." She said, "I know." And that was it. That was all she said. I know. 14 years of marriage reduced to I know. The divorce was not the worst part. The worst part was watching my children choose sides. My daughter Amanda chose her mother. Of course she did. They had always been close. Too close, maybe. I used to think it was beautiful, a mother and daughter sharing secrets and shopping trips and long phone calls. Now I saw it differently. Now I saw it as a conspiracy, a two-person alliance that had been forming against me for years without me noticing. My son Matthew tried to stay neutral. He called me every night. He asked how I was doing. He said he loved me, but he was 3 hours away. He had his own family, his own mortgage, his own problems. He could not save me. Nobody could save me. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of lawyers and mediation sessions and cold conference rooms with bad coffee and fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. My wife got the house, not because she deserved it, not because she earned it, but because she had a better lawyer, a pit bull in a pantsuit who painted me as a neglectful husband who spent too much time in his garage and not enough time with his family. It was not true. But truth does not matter in those rooms. What matters is who tells the better story. And her story was better. She said I was emotionally absent. She said I loved my tools more than I loved her. She said I put my work and my hobbies and my truck before our marriage. I sat there and listened to her describe a man I did not recognize. And I said nothing. Because what was I supposed to say? That I worked double shifts so she could stay home with the kids? That I fixed every broken thing in that house with my own 2 hands? That I taught our son to shave and walked our daughter down the aisle and held my wife's hand when her mother died? None of that mattered. The story was already written. I was the villain. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. A 1-bedroom with a kitchen the size of a closet and a bathroom where the shower curtain always smelled like mildew. My grandson Liam came to visit once. He sat on my couch and looked around at the bare walls and asked why I did not have any pictures up. I said I had not gotten around to it. He said, "You should put up the one of us at the lake." I said, "I will, buddy." But I never did. I could not look at those pictures. They made my chest hurt. The financial part of the divorce was brutal. I lost half of my retirement savings. I lost the house. I lost the truck because I could not afford the payments anymore. I bought a used sedan from a dealer who smelled like cigarettes and desperation. I drove it to my apartment and sat in the parking lot for an hour just staring at the dashboard. I was 67 years old. I had worked since I was 16. I had given everything to my family. And now I had nothing. Nothing but a 1-bedroom apartment and a used car and a box of photographs I could not bring myself to open. But the worst betrayal was still coming. I did not know it yet. I thought the divorce was the bottom. I thought I had hit rock bottom and the only direction left was up. I was wrong. There was a basement below rock bottom, and my son-in-law Kyle was holding the key. 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a letter in the mail. A thick envelope from a law firm I had never heard of. I opened it in my kitchen, standing over the sink. It was a lawsuit. Kyle was suing me. For what, you ask? For defamation, for emotional distress, for something called tortious interference. I had to look that one up. It means interfering with someone's business or personal relationships. According to Kyle, I had been telling people that he was a con artist and a thief and a manipulator. I had said none of those things. I had barely spoken to anyone since the divorce. But Kyle had a witness. His witness was my daughter Amanda. She signed an affidavit saying she heard me say those things at a family dinner that never happened. She lied under oath. My own daughter. She lied to help her husband take me to court. I called Matthew that night.
I told him about the lawsuit.
He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "Amanda and Kyle's been planning this for a while. They want to take your Social Security. They want to take the rest of your retirement. They want to take everything." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because I heard them talking at Thanksgiving." I said, "Thanksgiving was 2 years ago." He said, "I know. I have known for 2 years and I did not say anything because I did not want to cause problems." I hung up the phone. I did not yell at him. I did not cry. I just hung up and sat in the dark. 2 years. My son knew for 2 years that his sister and her husband were plotting to destroy me, and he said nothing because he did not want to cause problems. I thought about all those Sunday phone calls, all those times he asked how I was doing, all those "I love you, dads," and underneath it all he was hiding a bomb that was about to go off in my face. The lawsuit dragged on for 14 months. 14 months of depositions and interrogatories and motions and hearings. I could not afford a good lawyer. I hired a man named Gary who wore wrinkled suits and showed up late to our meetings. He meant well, but he was not a pit bull. He was a golden retriever, friendly and loyal, but useless in a fight. Kyle had a team of lawyers, young sharks in expensive shoes who spoke in rapid-fire sentences designed to confuse and exhaust me. It worked. I was exhausted. I was confused. I was broke. Halfway through the lawsuit, I got sick. Nothing dramatic, just a cough that would not go away, then a fever that came and went, then pain in my chest when I breathed too deep. I went to a clinic. They did x-rays. They did blood work. They told me I had pneumonia. They gave me antibiotics and told me to rest. But I could not rest. I had a lawsuit to fight. I had depositions to attend. I had a daughter who wanted to destroy me, and a son who stood by and watched, and a wife who had already taken everything else. I lost the lawsuit. Of course I lost. The jury took 4 hours to decide that I had defamed Kyle. They awarded him $50,000 in damages. $50,000 I did not have. The judge ordered me to pay it over time, $200 a month for the next 20 years. I was 69 years old. I would be 89 when I made the last payment, if I lived that long. I did not go to the hearing when they read the verdict. I could not. I stayed in my apartment and watched the news and pretended it was happening to someone else, someone who deserved it, someone who had actually done something wrong. But I had not done anything wrong. I had just loved my family. I had just shown up. I had just fixed the faucets and changed the oil and paid for the weddings and held the babies and thought that was enough. I thought love was enough. I thought sacrifice was enough. I thought being a good father and a good husband would protect me. But it did not protect me. It made me a target. After the lawsuit, I stopped answering my phone. Matthew called. I let it ring. Amanda called once. I did not answer. Kyle did not call. Of course not. He had won. He did not need to call anymore. My wife called too. She left a voicemail. Her voice sounded old and tired. She said she was sorry for how things ended. She said she hoped I was okay. She said maybe we could have coffee sometime. I deleted the message without listening to the end. There was nothing left to say to her. She had made her choice. She chose David and the house and the retirement money and the life she wanted without me. That was her right, but she did not have to take everything. She did not have to let our daughter finish the job. The last time I saw my grandson Liam was at a gas station. I was pumping gas into my old sedan, and he was getting out of his mother's SUV. He saw me. He waved. I waved back. He started walking toward me, but Amanda grabbed his arm and pulled him back. She said something to him. I could not hear what. He looked at me with sad eyes, and then got back in the car. Amanda looked at me. Just looked. No wave, no smile, no acknowledgement that I was her father and she was my daughter, and we had once danced at her wedding, and I had cried when she was born, and I had loved her more than I have ever loved anything in this entire world. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was a billboard on the side of the road, something to be seen and then forgotten. She got in the SUV and drove away. I finished pumping my gas and drove back to my apartment and sat on the couch and stared at the wall for 3 hours. That was 2 years ago. I am 71 now. I live in the same apartment. The mildew smell never went away. I have a routine. I wake up, I make coffee, I sit in my chair, I watch the morning news, I take my pills, I go to the grocery store, I come home, I eat lunch alone, I watch more television, I eat dinner alone, I go to bed. Some days I do not speak to another human being. Those are the good days. The bad days are when I run into someone I used to know, a neighbor from the old house, a friend from the church we used to attend. They ask how I am doing. I say fine. They ask about the family. I say they are fine too. We both know I am lying. I still have the box of photographs. It sits on top of my refrigerator. I have not opened it in 18 months, but I remember every picture, every moment, every smile. There was one of my wife and me on our wedding day. She is wearing white. I am wearing a suit that was too big. We are both laughing at something the photographer said. I do not remember what it was. I just remember that I was happy. I remember believing that happiness was a place you could stay forever. There is a picture of Amanda on her first day of kindergarten. She is holding a lunchbox with a cartoon unicorn on it. Her backpack is bigger than her body. She is missing 2 front teeth. She looks scared.
I told her it was okay to be scared. I told her I would be right there when school ended. I was. I was always right there. Until I was not. There is a picture of Matthew holding a baseball bat. He is 9 years old. He has dirt on his knees and a grin that takes up his whole face. He just hit his first home run. I was coaching third base. I ran to meet him at home plate. I lifted him in the air. He weighed nothing. He felt like feathers and bones and pure joy. I thought that boy would grow up to be my best friend. He did. For a while. Then he became a man who knew his sister was trying to destroy me and said nothing because he did not want to cause problems. I think about that a lot. The not wanting to cause problems. That is what destroyed me. Not my wife's affair. Not the divorce. Not the lawsuit. Not even Kyle. It was the silence. The silence of my children. The way they watched me fall and did not reach out a hand. The way they chose comfort over courage. The way they convinced themselves I deserved what happened because it was easier than admitting they had become the kind of people who let their father die alone. I am not dead yet. That is the worst part. I am still here. I am still breathing. I still have a heart that beats, and lungs that fill with air, and eyes that can see the sunrise over the parking lot of my apartment complex every morning. But I am not living. I am waiting. I am waiting for the phone to ring. I am waiting for one of them to say they were wrong. I am waiting for my daughter to remember that I carried her on my shoulders through the zoo when she was 3 years old, and she fell asleep with her cheek against my hair. I am waiting for my son to remember that I drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to help him change a flat tire on the side of the highway because he was scared and alone, and he needed his dad. I am waiting for my wife to remember that we were young once, and we promised each other forever, and forever was supposed to mean something. But the phone does not ring. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. The mail comes. Bills. Advertisements. A catalog for gardening supplies I will never buy. Nothing from them. Nothing at all. I still have my garage. Not a real garage. The apartment does not have one. But I have a storage unit across town where I keep my tools, my father's workbench, the one he built in 1965. I go there sometimes. I sit on a folding chair and look at the hammers and the saws and the wrenches hanging in neat rows. I run my hand over the wood. I remember the smell of sawdust and sweat and the sound of my father's voice telling me to hold the flashlight steady. He was not a perfect man. He made mistakes. He was stubborn and proud and hard to love sometimes. But he never stole from me.
He never lied to me. He never stood by while someone else tore my life apart. He showed up. He fixed things. He taught me to be a man. And I tried to be that kind of man for my own children. I tried so hard.
But somewhere along the way, I taught them the wrong lesson. I taught them that my love was unconditional, and my resources were infinite, and my patience would never run out. I taught them they could take and take and take, and I would still be there at the end of the day, with open arms and a full heart. I was wrong. My heart is not full anymore. It is hollow. It echoes when I breathe. There are chambers in there that used to hold love for my wife and my daughter and my son and my grandchildren. Now those chambers are empty. The love is gone. Not because I wanted it to leave, but because they took it. They took it the way they took my house and my retirement and my dignity, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a 71-year-old man in a one-bedroom apartment with a box of photographs on top of the refrigerator and a phone that does not ring. Sometimes I drive past the old house. Not often. Once every few months when the pain is not too sharp. The oak tree I planted is still there. It is taller now. The swing I hung for Amanda is gone. The garage door is new. There are flowers in the front yard that I did not plant. The woman who lives there now is not my wife. She sold the house after the divorce. I heard she moved in with David somewhere near the coast. I hope she is happy. I hope it was worth it. My son Matthew calls now. He started calling again 6 months ago. He says he is sorry. He says he did not know how bad it got. He says he should have said something. He says he wants to make it right. I listen to his voice, and I want to believe him. I want to believe that he is still the little boy with dirt on his knees and a home run grin. But I cannot make myself believe it. The trust is gone. The trust is gone, and I do not know how to get it back. Maybe I do not want to get it back. Maybe it is safer here in my apartment with my walls and my silence and my box of unopened photographs. My daughter has not called. Not once. I do not know if she thinks about me. I do not know if she ever wonders what happened to the man who taught her to ride a bike and walked her down the aisle and held her babies in his arms. I hope she does. I hope it keeps her up at night. I know that is not a good thing to say. I know I am supposed to forgive and forget and turn the other cheek. But I am tired of turning the other cheek. My cheeks are bruised. My heart is broken. And I am tired. So this is where I am, 71 years old, alone in an apartment that smells like mildew, waiting for a phone call that might never come, thinking about a house I used to own, and a family I used to have, and a life I used to believe in. The coffee is cold again. I did not notice when it happened. I just looked down and the mug was empty. And the morning was gone, and another day had slipped through my fingers like water. I am going to go to the storage unit now. I am going to sit on the folding chair and look at my father's workbench and remember what it felt like to be useful, to be needed, to be loved. I am going to pretend that the last 5 years did not happen. I am going to pretend that my daughter still loves me and my son still respects me, and my wife still remembers my name. I am going to pretend that I am not sitting here with nothing but a used car and a bad back and a heart full of scars. And then I am going to drive home. I am going to make a fresh pot of coffee. I am going to watch the evening news. I am going to take my pills. I am going to go to bed. And tomorrow I am going to do it all again, because that is what you do when you are 71 years old and your family has destroyed you, and there is nothing left except the small, brutal dignity of still being alive. I still have my hands. They still work. I can still hold a hammer. I can still turn a wrench. I can still fix things. That is something. That is not nothing. I can still fix things. I just cannot fix the things that matter most. I cannot fix my family. I cannot fix my heart.
I cannot fix the past, but I can sit in my garage. I can run my hand over the wood. I can close my eyes and pretend that when I open them, I will be 30 years old again, with a whole life ahead of me, and a whole family who loves me, and a whole world that makes sense. I can pretend. That is what I have left. Not hope. Not love. Not forgiveness. Just pretending.
Just a 71-year-old man in a storage unit, pretending that the people he raised did not throw me away like a broken tool. The coffee is cold. The phone is silent. The sun is going down. And I am still here. For now.